Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have to just stop trying to do it semi-professionally because it's not working. Now I got to find where I'm on here and turn it off. On the road, trying to make things work, trying to make them sound right, and not doing a good job of it. It's hard to explain unless you've tried to do some radio yourself, and then you get it. And plus, I forgot my headphones, and I can't hear myself. So, hey, we are doing everything that we can to try to make this right and try to get it going. But let me know that you hear me. And I got, I have a bandwidth problem, so I just want to make sure that everything is good there on the bandwidth side too. So I think we're okay. It's great, Jeff. All right, thank you so much. Well, folks, we are on the road. We are in Rapid City, South Dakota, and we're doing all we can to continue, like a mailman, to bring you our mail, bring you the mail, rain, snow, sleet, dark of night. Honey, can you see where those, I think I've got those headphones in one of these cubby holes somewhere, or they're just sitting over there somewhere. See, oh, they're right there in front of you, right here by the flame. Thank you. All right, folks. So we got a good show for you tonight. We've got some good information for you tonight. We just got to get ourselves into the place where we can give it to you with some sort of quality. And I'm working my way towards it. We're in a different time zone, so I got the time wrong too. Oh boy, I tell you. So it is an interesting night for sure, ladies and gentlemen. But we're going to make it work. And the information that we're bringing is going to be second to none. So once we get this thing going, you guys are going to be ready to rock and roll. I want to thank you to all of the cousins that send in Cousins News Network information. Now I can hear myself. Everything's right in the world. I know some of you are saying, well, why does somebody have to hear themselves? If you've ever done any radio or any broadcasting, you will know why you need to hear yourself, because it just makes it almost impossible to be able to do what you need to do without that, which is more than you needed to know. So let's get right into the Cousins News Network. And it's so hard to do, as I'm trying to figure out how I can share this for you without, you know what? I think we're going to forget about the Cousins News Network tonight. And let me just talk to you, because this is just problematic. And again, it's also bandwidth issues. So let's just talk about something tonight. And I thought about this. Normally we just do one subject. We do the Cousins News Network ahead. But let's talk about a subject that came to me today, a realization, maybe even two of them. And welcome to the people that are watching on YouTube. We're going to try to stay on YouTube as much as we can tonight. But it's not a free speech platform, not anymore. And it makes it impossible to talk about the things that we talk about, because we talk about real world stuff around here, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll stay as long as we can. And you're going to say, well, Jeff, I can't find any of your videos on YouTube. Well, that's because I delete them right after we do the show live, because it's going to get deleted anyway, and we don't want to lose the channel. We got 15. Here's a little bonus subject from Jeffery Daugherty, the Christian whistleblower. And now I got my groove. We'll be okay. I don't have any coffee yet, but I got a groove. We're going to be good. We're going to be good. So everybody knows you have to go to college to get a good job, right? Everybody knows that. You got to go to college to get a good job. Who told you that? Who told you that you had to go to college to get a good job? Yet every single one of you pretty much believes it. Every single one of you parrots that. And if you're a parent, you tell your son that, you tell your daughter that. You have to go to college to get a job. How do you know that? Who told you that? Think about it. The regime media told you that. It's the media that's telling you constantly, oh, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. You got to go to college. Newspapers, you got to go to college. Movies, you got to go to college. Radio, you got to go to college. Television, you got to go to college. Everybody knows you have to go to college. So the regime media, who we say we don't believe, tells us we've got to go to college to get a good job. So what do? Most of us go to college. And when you think about it, who dominates the regime media? Greatly dominates the regime media. No questions whatsoever. They dominate the regime media. And we know who it is. The usual suspects dominate the regime media. We know these people don't have our best interests at heart. We know these people don't have our best interests in mind. And yet we parrot their teachings. You got to go to college to get a good job. Okay. So you buy that. You buy what the regime media tells you. You've got to go to college to get a good job. And then you go and you don't even know what you want to do or what kind of a thing you want to study when you're there. So you're spending 2 years figuring out what you even want to do. You're going to college because the media told you to go to college, and you have no idea why you're there. And now that you're going to college, how are you going to pay for it? Unless you can throw a ball through a hole or run with the ball or hit a ball, you're going to have to pay for it with what? Loans. So the media and the people that run the media tell you you've got to go to college to get a good job. And then the same people that tell you you got to go to college to get a good job are the ones that give you the loans. Who runs the financial system, folks? Who runs the financial system? The same people that run the media. So you borrow money from them to go to college because they told you you had to go. And by the way, who dominates the education system? Oh, it's the same people. It's the same people. So let's review just for a second. You borrow money from them to go to a college they told you had to go to so they can indoctrinate you in what they want you to believe. Wow. And then think of this. How many happy, gainfully employed, fully employed, just thrilled to be alive people do you meet in jobs right out of college? How many? Not a whole lot, do you? Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. And guess what? You've got an average of $55,000 of debt. And that's on the low end. Because you had to go to college and you had to borrow money from the people that told you had to go to college. And you got told what to believe by people that told you to borrow the money to go to college because you had to get a good job. And it just so happens that you're going to pay about 50 grand in school loans if you're good. And guess what? Your first year's pay on average with a bachelor's degree is going to be about $50,000. Oh, well, Jeff, it balances out in 1 year. You're not thinking. Think about, let's say, because the average is actually $54,000 of college debt, and your first year's salary or your starting salary out of college is $54,000. That probably includes benefits and stuff like that. But let's just say it's dollar for dollar. You owe $54,000. You're going to make $54,000 your first year. Why doesn't that work? Well, here's why. It doesn't work because your wage, that $54,000, is subject to Taxes. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. And guess what? The $54,000 that you spent on tuition, that is subject to a thing called interest. So by the time you get around to paying your debt, which is $54,000 in real money, now you've got to add your interest on. And by the time people end up paying their college debt, they're darn near close to $100,000 in debt. You go to college because the people told you to go to college and loaned you the money to go to it and made you their servant because they're the lender, and then they're the ones that were in charge of what is called educating you. So what's the end result? The end result is that you wind up 4 years later indebted, indoctrinated, and probably unfulfilled. So you can go to work to build somebody else's dreams, and that's if it works out. Do you know how many Cynthia's grandson and my son both, they're workers. They go out and they work. And they both went and worked at McDonald's. Do you think they really wanted to go to work at McDonald's? I can guarantee you my son's lifelong dream wasn't to work at McDonald's. Not that there's anything wrong with working at McDonald's. Cynthia's grandson's lifelong dream wasn't to work at McDonald's. And both of them were managing many people with bachelor's degrees. And neither one of them has a college degree. Think about that. That's the reality. Most people that are going to college for 4 years, getting a bachelor's degree in marketing, getting a bachelor's degree in business administration, getting a bachelor's degree in finance. You come out and you learn how to market Big Macs. You come out and you learn how to finance a Happy Meal. You come out and you learn how to administer the business of putting fries in a sack and putting a sack in a bag. That is the reality of what we're talking about. But you see, Cynthia's grandson did it very smart. He went to McDonald's. He saved some money, stayed out of trouble, and figured out what he wanted to do. And then he figured out, I'd really like to be a diesel mechanic. I'd really like to work on heavy equipment. So he found a place that will pay him and has paid him to go to trade school. Do you see the difference in the paradigm? They paid him to go to trade school. And you know what? While he's going to school, they go to school for a month or two, then they go to work for a month or two. I don't really know what the split is on the time, but the point of the matter is you don't have to take any loans because you go to school and then you go to work and you take the money that you were working that you get for getting paid and you go and you pay off your school. And then when he graduated, he had a job waiting for him. What is it, Cynthia, like $30 an hour? $30 an hour. Ain't nobody at McDonald's making $30 an hour. Folks, you've got to start rethinking. And it starts with eliminating this mindless parrot polywanna cracker thing that you got going on. I got to go to college. I got to go to college. No, you don't got to go to college. In fact, going to college is probably the worst thing you can do for most people. Get yourself a job somewhere that pays the bills. Go to work for McDonald's. They're hiring right now. They'll pay you $50 to go on an interview. You know my point. I have driven literally from coast to coast in the last year. In the last 6 months, I've driven coast to coast. I drove from Kansas to Virginia, had my feet in the ocean, drove from Kansas to California, same thing. I've gone coast to coast. And if I had $1 for every help wanted sign I saw, I would be filthy rich. And I'm telling you, all these signs say $15, $18, $20. And I know, oh, you got to wear this. Oh, you got to do that. Not always. Not always. So the point of the matter is, if you don't know what you want to do, if you don't know what you want to be, and if that thing that you want to be doesn't require a college degree, don't go to college. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of time, and you'll probably come out indoctrinated. And you've got to think about whose system you're working. Who told you that you need to go to college to get a good job? Who lends you the money and puts you into debt to go get a good job? Who educates you? And then who uses you to do a job you're overqualified for, so you end up building their dream with your blood, sweat, and tears, and you are indebted to them for $100,000 because you did it because everybody knows you got to go to college. I say it all the time. There was a fairly smart guy named Thomas Jefferson, and he said, no, it wasn't Thomas Jefferson, it was Mark Twain. Mark Twain said, if I ever find myself on the side of the majority, I stop and reevaluate. Folks, when everybody knows something, it's probably wrong. When everybody knows something, you need to say, oh, everybody knows this. That means that it's probably wrong. It's probably wrong. And I need to go the other way. Everybody knows you've got to go to college. It's a trap. What if instead you worked a job to pay your bills and maybe even work 2 jobs? I don't know. I've done it. Work a job that pays your bills and maybe even let you put a little money away until you figure out what your great basic purpose is. What are you here for? What were you made to do? What were you made to be? And when you find that out, it's probably not going to involve college, but if it does, then and only then do you go to college. Then and only then do you go to college. And I managed to go to college and not get any college loans, not have any college debt. That's just me. So all I'm saying is it can be done. But it's time for us to start rethinking. It's time for us to start reevaluating. And it's time for us to start making sure that we're thinking for ourselves and we're not just doing what everybody tells us to do, and we're not just doing what we know has to be the right thing. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight as well. And folks, one of the things that can help you get your mind right is Focus Life Force Energy. They send you a high consciousness field on demand, right to your home, right to your phone. And you can actually take this bubble of high consciousness with you. And it's amazing because it will actually help the people around you act more like human beings, even if they're not. They give you a 30-day trial, 15 days in the home, 15 days on the phone. You don't have to leave a credit card. It's not that kind of thing. You just get a free trial. And if you do become a customer, they also allow you to pay it forward and to give another place the benefits of the Focus Life Force Energy service at no additional cost to you. So you can go to jeffreydaugherty.com, come down under the videos, and click on the focused life force energy button. And working hand in hand with that is nanosoma. Nanosoma doesn't heal or cure at all on its own. None of that. But something remarkable happens when you put nanosoma into your body. It goes down to the cellular level and it optimizes and empowers your body to heal, cure everything that's wrong with it. And especially now in this day and age, when we've got people that are going swimming, where we've got people that are being pushed into the pool, they're being forced to go swimming. First of all, don't go swimming. And yet, if you've had to go swimming, if you've made a poor decision to go swimming, you must go to jeffreydaugherty.com. You must go down below the videos. You must click on the nanosoma button. You must order nanosoma today. Because if you get it, when you get it into your body, it will empower your body to dump all of the garbage that's not supposed to be in there out of there. And if you're afraid of getting wet from other people that have gone swimming, it does the very same thing. Don't live in fear. No reason to live in fear because nanosoma is here. I know that sounds a little silly, a little corny, but it's absolutely, positively true. Absolutely, positively true. And I did the same thing, 2 trees. 2 trees took 18 hours per semester, which is a full load plus, and he worked 45 hours. It was hard, and it made him appreciate and hold professors to a high standard. That's true. If you have to be a super smart engineer, inventor, scientist guy like 2 Trees is, or like Ken is, I saw Ken, the scientist in here from C60 Purple Power, then you're going to have to go to college if that's what you want to be. Just make sure. And then work your butt off and don't go into debt. Tracy Dyer did the same thing as well. So it's a perfect segue. What do we want to talk about tonight? And I think I'm going to be able to share the famous Jeffery Daugherty PowerPoint presentations. I think I'm going to be able to share it with you. And I hope so, because it's a great presentation. And I know that it will help you get the information down. And let me see how I can share it here. I should be able to do so. It's fun trying to work things from this way, you know, not being able to really know what I'm doing and to be out here on the road. It's stretching me. It's tasking me, right? It's making me grow. It's making me grow. So let's see. Can I split these screens and see them both? Is that possible? That would be really cool. Plus, I'm using a microphone, so I got to hold the microphone. Folks, it is not easy what I'm doing right here, right now. It is not easy doing what I'm doing right here, right now. I hope you appreciate the amazingness that you are beholding. All right, let's see here. Come on. Get bigger for me. Yep, you ladies have said that yourselves, haven't you? All right, here we go. Here we go. I think we got it. So, exposed. Prophecy exposed. Exposed as what? Exposed as a Jesuit PSY-OP. And as soon as I get these windows the right size, guys, I'll be able to talk straight into the microphone again, and it'll be much easier for you to hear me. All right, so here we go. Prophecy exposed as a Jesuit PSY-OP. And you see the word down there, irrefutable, irrefutable. That means that you will not be able to prove me wrong. You will not be able to prove me wrong, period. You can't do it because I'm not wrong. And there's absolutely no way that you will be able to talk yourself or talk your way out of this. You cannot do it. This is the way that it is, folks. Prophecy is a Jesuit PSY-OP, and we're going to expose it here tonight, not because I want to prove that I'm right, not because I think you're dumb. No, because I think you've been deceived, and it's time that you at least get the full story. And once I deliver the mail, I move on, and you do with it what you will. So let's see if I can make these things advance. Boom, look at that. That's crazy. And if you're a Christian, or you don't call yourself, if you identify as a Christian, or you identify as somebody that believes the Bible, if you think you know more about prophecy than I do, or if you think I'm wrong, I will open up the phone lines at some point. I'm going to try my best and see what happens. We'll open up the phone lines, and you can call me. You can call me, and you can prove me wrong. I'm giving you that opportunity. And if you're a Christian, then you really have the obligation to call me and prove me wrong. But most people that are Christians won't do anything. They won't say anything. They'll try to drive by, evangelize in the chat room, and we ignore them. But they don't have what it takes to pick up a phone and call, because the Christians aren't sure because they never read the book themselves. And the preachers and the teachers, the priests and the gurus, they know that they're wrong, and they know that they can't stand the exposure that I would bring them, so they don't call. They don't call. Sometimes they stop by and write their silly little stupid notes, but no guts. No guts. So I'm still waiting for some great preacher, some great teacher to step up and have a discussion with me about Bible prophecy. I won't hold my breath, don't worry. Because if I did, you know what would happen? I would die. So let's talk about Bible prophecy. And Bible prophecy is a history of failures, one after the other. And the first recorded failure of Bible prophecy that we have, this takes me back to my preaching days, ladies and gentlemen. I'm holding a microphone. That's the way we did it back in the old days. We held a microphone. We walked across the stage. We had our Bibles over our heads, and we shook them. Sometimes if you're really fancy, you put a handkerchief in your hand and put the microphone in the handkerchief because it looked really cool. And then you could always wipe your brow. But I don't need to wipe my brow. I'm going to use that for something later in the show. But anyway, the first prophetic failure, the first failed prophet, which is really just a jester, a joker, a clown. It doesn't mean what you think it means. But the first failure of the first failure of Bible prophecy was the false apostle Paul. You heard me right. He's a false apostle. He is a false apostle. I've proven that. I'm the OG of that genre. I started the Apostle Paul Antichrist genre. Wrote a book of the same name, went on coast to coast. I'm the one that started all that. But the false apostle Paul wrote in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse number 16, he wrote, "For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first." Now listen to this. Paul said, "Then we caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord, one another," with these words. As you read this, there's no way, if you don't go to private interpretation, which Peter said, no prophecy of the scripture, it doesn't mean just foretelling, it also means forthtelling. None of the writings of the scripture are subject to any personal or private interpretation. That's what the Apostle Peter said. And it's funny, me that doesn't believe any of it's true follows that, and none of the Christians do. None of the teachers do. None of the gurus do. They don't. Why? Because They can't, or they're proven to be liars, and they lose their clicks, they lose their dollars, they lose their money, they lose their subscribers, they lose their channel, and then they got to go get a real job. But Paul clearly said, we who are alive and remain, we shall ever be with the Lord. He wrote this in the mid-first century, allegedly. Paul thought that the rapture was going to come in his day. There's no way to read that, especially in the original languages. He's talking about a present tense. We expected, we who are alive and remain. Sure. To take place when he was alive and when the people he was talking to were alive, at least some of them. So shall we ever be with the Lord. It's very easy to see. It's very easy to understand. Very, very easy to understand. Paul clearly taught that the rapture would happen in his day. Paul was wrong. Paul was a failure. How long will Christians continue to ignore this? And perhaps a better question is, how long will Christians be allowed to get away with this? As long as we allow them to do it. As long as we allow them to do it. That's why I'm calling out the prophets tonight. That's why I'm identifying them as Jesuit complicit deceivers. And if you believe in Bible prophecy, I'm going to show you tonight that you're says no prophecy of the scriptures of any private interpretation. The word prophecy there means foretelling or forthtelling. So none of the Bible is subject to your private interpretation. Jeff, you're misinterpreting it. No, I'm not interpreting it because I'm not supposed to interpret it. I'm supposed to read it. The people that wrote the Bible knew the language that they were writing in, and they thoroughly understood the words that were available, and they chose the words they wanted to use. And just because it doesn't fit what you want to believe doesn't mean that you've got the right to interpret the scriptures according to your own beliefs because Peter said it. You can do it if you want, but if you do it, you is divine. And we let the Christians get away with it. And while we're there, I want to just turn the knife a little bit. I stuck the knife in. I want to turn it a little bit. Where's all my Christians at? How do you deal with this verse, Christians? 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 34. Remember, Peter said no private interpretation is allowed. That means what says the script says. Paul, author of 2/3 of the New Testament, allegedly wrote, women are to be silent in the churches. They are not permitted to speak, but must be in submission. Must be in submission. Women are not allowed to have authority over a man. Women are not allowed to teach. Said Apostle Paul. How many of you that are women are silent in church? Let me hear from some of you women preachers. Let me hear from some of you husbands of women preachers. They're not permitted to speak. They must be submission. They must be silent. How come we don't hear anybody preaching on that one? Oh, Jeff, you have to understand the cultural realities of Corinth in the day. No, that's called private interpretation. You find something in your script that you can't justify, and you start lying and tap dancing and making shit up. That's called private interpretation. And I'm the only one that doesn't do that. And yet I'm the devil. Everybody knows that Jeff Daugherty's the devil. Remember what we talked about when everybody knows? Have you ever heard of the Great Disappointment? It unfolded between 1831 and 1844. There was this group led by a guy named William Miller. He was a Baptist preacher by trade. And based on his study of the Bible, specifically the Bible prophecy of Daniel, he predicted that the second coming of Christ would occur, and I quote, sometime between March 21st, 1843, and March 21st, 1844. That was his prediction. Well, needless to say, it did not come to pass. That prediction did not come to pass. And it was actually the first great prophetic prediction in the modern era, and it received widespread media attention. But when 1844 came and went, no plastic Jesus, well, the scenario was dubbed the Great Disappointment. And it was a great disappointment. It had to be to those that believed it was true. And despite this prophetic failure, Miller must have been very charismatic. He must have been giving them something they wanted to hear, because despite the prophetic failure, his group survived, at least in part, and his group actually spawned two super large religious groups. Out of the William Miller group came what we know today as the Seventh-day Adventists. Out of the William Miller group came a group that used to be called the Bible Students, and now is called Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, the Adventists learned Miller's lesson well and have avoided any more adventures in date setting. Well, for the most part. For the most part. They have had some little dalliances. Mrs. White, she didn't quite say it, but she came close to saying it. But anyway. But there is this guy named Brother Stare. I don't know if you've ever heard of Brother Stare. These are the voices of the last day prophet of God. Behold, the day is at hand. Maranatha. Walterboro, South Carolina. Former Seventh-day Adventist. He's still setting dates. He keeps getting them wrong, but he sets another date. And the Jehovah's Witnesses aren't any smarter than Brother Stare. Although I have to say that Brother Stare was a gentleman. I wrote an email. He sent an email back. Thank you, Brother Stare. The Jehovah's Witnesses, however, have survived two additional date-setting fiascos. They decided, well, you know what? They got it wrong with 1844, because it was really supposed to be 1914. Oh, well, we got that wrong because it wasn't really 1914. That was just the spiritual arrival. 1974 is going to be the real one. Well, 1914, 1974, they went bye-bye. No plastic Jesus. Nowhere to be seen. Nowhere to be found. Ain't no plastic Jesus anywhere around. Now, I'm told by some of these experts that there might be coronal mass ejections. There might be EMP bursts. And you know what? There might be. And not because of Nibiru, and not because of anything nefarious, but because there just might be some EMP bursts. There might be times where there might be times where, you didn't do what they want you to do and they give you an EMP burst. It would knock out all the power in your car, all the power in your home, but not if you had an EMP shield. EMP shields protect your home, they protect your car, and that can be the same thing as protecting your life. If you go to empshield.com and use the coupon code UNINDOCTRINATE, you get $50 off. $50. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cousins of all ages, that's real money. It pays to be a cousin. Get your EMP shield today. Use the coupon code UNINDOCTRINATE. and you get $50 off. $50, can I hear you holler? Thank you for that $10 tip. I appreciate it. I can't see exactly who it was. Let me go back up to it. It was Ben. I appreciate you, Ben. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right. Let's look at 1988. Most of you are too young to remember this. This was right in the middle of my deal here. 88 reasons why the rapture will occur in 1988. You know what? We talked about college a little bit, and Bible prophecy must be more difficult than rocket science. In fact, there's proof that Bible prophecy is more difficult than rocket science. How do I know? Because this rocket scientist, this NASA engineer named Edgar C. Whisenant, well, he wrote this book, 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988. It wasn't. He was wrong. And I think it's interesting that NASA got involved in prophecy. I'm wondering if NASA wasn't part of this 88 Reasons prophecy fiasco. I'm just thinking out loud. But at any rate, Edgar Whisenant, former NASA engineer, infamously, incorrectly predicted the rapture would occur sometime between September 11th and September 13th, 1988, which is interesting because they picked September 11th. Something about that date, huh? And oh man, I just put that together. September 11th happened during the Feast of Tabernacles. September 11th, 2001 was during the Feast of Tabernacles. This is during the Feast of Tabernacles. Interesting. Interesting. The Feast of Trumpets, actually, which is the start of Tabernacles, pretty much. But Whisenant did something very interesting. He connected date setting, the Christian date setting stuff. Tracy also reported that he was a Freemason. I didn't know that. Thank you, Tracy. That gives it even more credence. Or maybe she's referencing NASA being all Freemasons. How can they keep all of those astronauts secret? How can they keep all of those astronauts not telling the stories of the fakeness of space? Well, because they're all Freemasons. That's why. That's the answer. Find me an astronaut that wasn't a Freemason. I'll open the phone lines. You can tell me, but you better bring some receipts. You're not going to find one. So he linked date setting to the fall feast of the Jewish High Holy Days. And what this does, folks, is exposes, it reveals, it trumpets out, if you'll allow me that, it trumpets out the Zionist core of all Bible prophecy, and it reveals the deception. Every bit of Bible prophecy comes from a Zionist, Jesuit core of deception. And I'm going to prove it to you tonight. And yet, the Christians still believe it, and most of you won't see it. But I have to hand it to Edward. Was that his name, Edward? His name was Edgar. I got to hand it to Edgar. Edgar had passion. Edgar had some money. He mailed out 300,000 copies of his book free of charge to ministers across America, including a young Assemblies of God minister named Jeffery Daugherty. And yet, it turned out to be a brilliant marketing strategy because he sold over 4.5 million copies in bookstores. Let's say he only got $1 for each one. That's $4.5 million. Wow. He got 50 cents from, that's $2.25 million. He got a quarter. That's like over $1 million. Wow. That's a lot of money. So maybe he wasn't a dummy. Maybe he knew exactly what he was doing. But I admit to being swayed by this book for a time. which is exactly why you should listen to me. See, this is what you Christians that listen to me fail to understand. This is what you folks that are really of the synagogue of Satan saying that you're not Jews, but you are. You're completely complicit. You're completely deceived by Zionism, the Zio Christian matrix, blood magic, fear and guilt, trauma-based mind control matrix. You're totally, completely ensnared with it. And I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt in saying that you've been deceived and that you're in a state of ignorance, which means you don't know. I'm giving you the benefit of that doubt. And tonight I'm sharing with you that I've been where you are. I've done what you've done. I've listened to people that say things like the rapture's not real, the Bible's not real, prophecy is invented. And I yelled at them. I screamed at them. If it had been YouTube, I would have picked up a phone and called them. But I don't suffer from low testosterone, and my testicles have descended. They're not still, what's that called when they stay up? You know what I'm talking about. But that's just me. But you should listen to me because I used to preach everything you believed. And I preached it good, baby. I mean, good. I preached the rapture so well, you feel your feet start to leave the ground. I preach hell so hot, the bottom of your feet start to burn. I preach heaven so glorious that you can hear the harp music. I've been where you are. I've done what you've done, and I've forgotten more about this than you'll ever know. So you might want to listen, because I've been there and I've done that. And I'm here to bring you the mail. I'm here to help you. I'm here to give you information. And you can, I'm the Fram oil filter man. Remember the Fram oil filter man? You can pay me now, you can pay me later. Sooner or later, you're going to pay. Sooner or later, the words, wow, Jeff was right, will come out of your mouth. It might be on your deathbed. It might be right as you're dying. It might be when you find out that what I've said is true and you're in a heap big trouble. Might be. But one of these days, you'll say, wow, Jeff was right. You can pay me now. You can pay me later. It's up to you. But so believable was Wizenant that as the date approached, regular programming on the Trinity Broadcasting Network, which was the biggest thing going in Christianity, was interrupted to provide special instructions on preparing for the rapture. Can you believe that? It's true. It is true. Then comes 2011. Harold Camping, Family Radio. In 2011, a former civil engineer. We got a rocket scientist. We got a civil engineer. It's interesting. He was president of Family Radio, which was a California-based radio station group that broadcasted to more than 150 markets in the United States. And he predicted, after all these other people had predicted and failed, he predicted that the rapture would occur on May 21st, 2011, with the ultimate end of the world, second coming again, the second for 21st, 2011. Again, the linking of the feast days, linking of the Talmudic Jewish feast days and Christian prophecy shows again to us that Zadokim Zionism is at the core of the Christian prophetic message. Now, Camping temporarily gained a global following and millions of dollars in donations. So again, maybe they're crazy like foxes. Maybe they're crazy like foxes. I don't know. I don't know. But then came the blood moons of 2015. The lunar tetrad blood moon craze of 2015. Again, Jewish prophecy, Zionist prophecy, Zadokim prophecy. The predictions just kept coming. It's almost as though end time prophecy, eschatology as it's called, is some kind of a fever. It's some kind of a sickness. Dare say a virus? Well, they don't really exist, but it's a real malady, this eschatology fever. It seems like it infects the minds of otherwise stable individuals and some that aren't so stable. But again, this was tied to the Zionists and feast days. What's his name? The fat guy I never met a Twinkie he didn't like? Hagee. He was all about this. He was all about this. Yeah, Cynthia says she forgot about those. Yep. But, folks, we saved the worst for last. Do you remember the September 23 Revelation 12 sign? Do you remember back in September? Specifically, September 23, 2017, Revelation 12, September 23 sign. This was back when I first started really being serious on YouTube. And I remember it was L.A. Marzulli and Scotty Clark. They were pushing this stuff so hard. And some of you did believe it. And some of you still do. It held the rapt attention of a huge group of Christians and YouTube truthers, quote unquote. Do you know who YouTube truthers are? The YouTube truthers are the wicked and adulterous generation that eagerly seeks after signs. We'll talk about them later. Which were you? Which are you? Are you wicked or are you adulterous? If you're into prophecy, you're one or the other. It's kind of like voting. You want to vote Republican or Democrat? Are you voting wicked or adulterous? You're the same. You're one or the other. You're either wicked or adulterous if you believe in prophecy. Why? Because how do you know? What is all prophecy based upon? The signs. Oh, this sign of the rapture, the signs of the second coming, the signs of this. It's all about signs. And it's the words of Christ in blood red of children that says it's a wicked and adulterous generation that seeks after a sign. And I'll be showing you that later in the program. And folks, speaking of that, some of you think you're going through the tribulation. So you better get yourself over to jeffreydaugherty.com and click on the Mint Builder logo, because you can get these little 1 ounce silver pieces, little silver dimes if you want, and you can use that stuff during the tribulation. I only partially jest, because if the excrement ever does hit the rotating appliance, you might need a replacement system, at least temporarily, for the fallout of the present financial system and the development of another. And for 5,000 years, precious metals have been real money. So go to mintbuilder.com, go to jeffreydaugherty.com, click on the Mint Builder logo, and when you buy your silver, your gold, your platinum, your palladium there, your copper, or if you get one of their subscriptions so you can put it on, just set it and forget it and stack up some silver, some gold, some precious metals, we get a few shekels ourselves to keep things going. So which one are you? Are you wicked or are you adulterous? It's up to you. You get to pick. But this Zio-Christian fiasco, this September 23, Revelation 12 blood sign, it was based upon complicated, fanciful textual mechanizations of eschatologists, which linked again Zionist Talmudic interpretation with planets and stars to manufacture signs that the rapture and the second coming were right around the corner. And there was absolute outright lying. It's never happened in 10,000 years. And of course, I went on the air and showed people that it had been happening repeatedly throughout the years. And I think the latest one was about 6 years before this event. Oh, this sign that's never before seen. Liars. Liars are stupid. Or liars are very sloppy in their scholarship, one or the other. One or the other. And if you are or were a true Bible student, you would have seen it coming. You would have seen it coming. if you were a true Bible study, a true student of the Bible, you would have seen it. But you're not, and that's why most of you didn't. Because you're not, because you are not students of the scripture. We're trying to change that tonight. And right now, even though I don't know how good it's going to work, I need to take a little break. And when we come back, maybe I'll see if I can open up the phone lines. But we'll be back with more of this broadcast excellence on the September 23 Revelation 12 sign and the rest of Bible prophecy. We'll be right back in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Let me see if I can get this queued up so we can actually hear it, because I can't leave you with silence. That would not do, would it? Can't leave you with silence. Let's see if we can make this work. Oh, yeah. Make the world stand still. All right, race, revolution. Oh yeah, pick up the fire. The world bursting. Yeah. Well, you can rock this land, baby. Yeah. With like a shot to the system. If you would, well, all right. Like a shot to the system. I said, yeah. And the world stood still. All right. A little shock to the system. That's what we are, ladies and gentlemen. We are a shock to the system here at the late night in the Heartland. You could be king. I could be king. We could be king. We're a shock to the system. Thank you, Billy, for giving me that break. I really needed it. So, folks, wow, we're ready to roll back on. And I don't think I ever stopped sharing that, did I? So you've had a long time to read that script. Good for you. Good for you. If you look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 14, let's see if we have enough internet connectivity. Do we? Captain, I don't know if we have the bandwidth. Well, let's see. Do we have the bandwidth, ladies and gentlemen? Do we have the bandwidth? I don't know if we've got the bandwidth, but we're going to try it. We're going to try it. Can we actually bring up Genesis 1:14 and show you how it reveals and exposes the fact that the September 23 Revelation 12 sign was just a bunch of garbage? It looks like we might be able to do it. Let's see. Let's see. What can we do? Genesis 1:14. I got it coming at you right here. I think. I love being on the road. We're having a great time, but boy, it's stressful because, you know, I don't like to do things halfway. I like to make sure it's first class because you deserve nothing but. And boy, we are working so hard to do it here for you. We really are. But look at this. Genesis chapter 1, verse number 14. I got the New King James or the NIV. That doesn't really matter. And God said, let there be light in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. And let them be for signs and seasons and days and years. Did you see that? Let them be for signs. Now, if we click on this blue 14, and if you can't see it, I'm just going into the verse itself. And I'm going to show you what these words mean. So when you see the Revelation 12 sign, when you see preachers talking about sign, you'll understand what we're going to talk about. Because remember, Matthew 16:4 said, it's a wicked and adulterous generation that demands or seeks after a sign. So there will be lights in the expanse of the heavens. That's stars, planets. Okay, we don't even have to go into that. They'll divide day and night, and they will be to mark for the seasons, the days, and the years. There'll be signs. What signs? Let's look at that word signs. Captain, she may fly apart. We'll fly her apart. But anyway, it's a sign. Who seeks after signs? The wicked and the adulterous generation seeks after signs. Wow. This is talking about signs. And what do the signs do? They mark the seasons. What are the seasons? The Moed. Do you know what the Moed is? The Moed is the feast days, the festivals, like trumpets and tabernacles, the appointed feasts that all of these prophetic, it's all tied to these feasts that you see right here in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. You see it's Zionistic, you see it's Zadigim, and you see they specifically use the word signs. So when Jesus, the Jesus character, in Matthew chapter 16 says to you, warns you about seeking after, what does he give you? He gives you exact same word, ladies and gentlemen. You're learning how to do this on your own tonight because you're having to watch me because it's just the way it is. Sorry, not 14, 16, but see, well, forget it. We'll go back up here and we'll go to 16. Matthew 16 in verse number 4. And the thing I like about this is that they were specifically asking him as regards prophecy. Matthew 16:4. The Pharisees and the Sadducees came and said to him, we want to see a sign from heaven. Every one of you that wants to see a sign from heaven, you're either Pharisee or Sadducee. Not only are you either Pharisee or Sadducee if you're seeking a sign, but he also said it's a wicked and an adulterous generation that seeks after a sign. What does all of these prophetic blunders have in common? They were all related to signs. Do you think it's just a coincidence that the Jesus character said signs, that the Pharisees wanted signs. This is a tell. This is a scriptural tell. It's a tell in the script. They're telling you that they are fooling you, and it's your fault for not seeing it, especially now that you've been shown it in very clear and easily understandable language. So I'll ask you again, are you a scribe or are you a Pharisee? Because if you're seeking signs, if you're looking for signs, you're one or the other. Are you wicked or are you adulterous? Because if you're looking for signs, you're one or the other. And I didn't say it. The Jesus character said it. Wow, Rockfin is working. I'm just not looking at it because I'm having to conserve bandwidth. And we broadcast over StreamYard, so that's what we're showing. Many of you listening to me tonight, you joined the Millerite Watchtower 88 Reasons Family Radio Hall of Infamy, right along with L.A. Marzulli, Scotty Clark, and virtually every other money-grubbing, Zionist shilling YouTuber out there. And you set and believed another date that, like the rest, came and went. They and you merely were, and some of you still are, the latest of the wicked and perverse generation that seeks after signs. And just as a juxtaposition, just to give you the other side, the wicked and the adulterous seek after signs. Oh, I want to see Nibiru coming back. I want to see the blood, the moon turn red. I want to see the rapture. I want to see a sign. Sign, sign, everywhere a sign. Or, here's your sign. But there's another portion in your script. I'm not going to tell you where it is, so you'll have to look it up. And it says, you know, little plastic Jesus with his little plastic feet, the Jesus character said, it's a wicked and an adulterous generation that demands a sign. It was the Pharisees and Sadducees, and it still is. It still is the Pharisees and Sadducees. But the script also gives you this disclosure. It says, the just shall live by faith. And faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And the faithful, the just, walk by faith, not by sight. If you're looking for signs, you don't have faith. If you're looking for signs, you're a Pharisee or a Sadducee. If you're looking for signs, you're wicked or adulterous. How make you feel? And the cray-cray continues. And you know why it continues? It continues because many of you still flock to the YouTube prophecy pimps and the YouTube pseudo-truthers peddling their Zio-inspired fear porn, fundraising, and ego-building nonsense. There's a reason why I call it the fear and guilt, blood magic, trauma-based mind control matrix. Because think about that. Let's break that down. Fear. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. You can't even understand the God that you claim to serve unless you're scared to death of him. Look it up in the Strongs, like I showed you. It doesn't mean reverence. It doesn't mean respect. It means fear, scared to death, wet in your pants. And Barkley, our dog, oh, I got to tell you this. We're driving from Kansas City. We get up to where we were going over in Sioux Falls. And you know, it's kind of confusing because up high in Iowa, there's Sioux City. And I'm like, oh, we're only 80 miles from our destination. But I found out that Sioux City and Sioux Falls, not the same place. I thought it was Sioux City, Iowa, Sioux City, South Dakota. That's really strange that there's like 100 miles apart. They're the same name of the town. Well, they're not. The one in Iowa is called Sioux City. The one in South Dakota is called Sioux Falls. They're not the same, but anyway, we got through Sioux City and to Sioux Falls, stayed overnight, and we're heading from Sioux Falls out to where we are now in Rapid City. And Barkley, our German Shepherd, is acting all crazy. We're like, sit down, sit down, sit down. Long story short, she had a blowout right there in the back seat. It wasn't her fault, right there on the floor, but we got those nice truck, super thick mats, pull out, hoses off, we're good to go. But at any rate, I don't know where I was going with that, but there you go. Oh, fear and guilt, blood matrix. It's called fear because the Christianity is based on fear. And you can't tell me that if fear of the Lord's beginning of wisdom, that Christianity is not based on fear. And I will wager you that at least as many people come for fear of hell than for love of little baby plastic Jesus. I'm just saying. So it's called the fear and guilt. I don't make this up just as it's a catchy little phrase. It's guilt. I remember when I was a Pentecostal preacher and I went around to other churches, right? And I'd preach for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, sometimes just 2 or 3 nights, maybe just one night only. And the Pentecostal churches had this song. And I'm not a very good singer, but the song was like this. It was, who killed Jesus all those years ago? Why did he have to die? What was the reason why? Who killed Jesus? I'd really like to know. So the song is asking, who's guilty? Who killed Jesus? And then it comes in and it says, I was the reason why. I'm the reason Jesus had to die. I killed Jesus all those years ago. Guilt-based matrix. Fear and guilt. It's very clear. Well, it's not exactly clear. All I know is that you didn't kill Jesus. Well, number one, he's not real. So it's like killing Santa. It's like killing the Easter Bunny. Can't really happen, so don't get all worked up about it. But let's just play the game for a minute. Who killed Jesus? It wasn't you, but they want you to think it's you because they got you guilty. Then they got you worried about fear. But from the script, I have a hard time deciding whether Jesus committed suicide or the Father murdered him. It was one or the other. But it's a fear and it's a guilt. It's a blood magic. Do you know that you're saved because some guy got tortured and killed by his daddy, and you cover yourself in his blood, you eat his blood, you drink his blood, you eat his flesh, and that makes you saved? Cousins, that's called blood magic. And fear, guilt, blood magic, that creates trauma. So you're suffering from a fear and guilt, blood magic, trauma-based mind control matrix. That's why I call it that, because it is that. And as difficult as it will be for every Christian person to even consider, the end time scenario didn't even exist for the first 15 centuries of Christian history. In other words, from the end of the Christian era in 100 AD all the way down to just about 1600, there was no end time scenario. There was no prophecy. That changed forever with the Protestant Reformation. Most people know about Martin Luther nailing his 95 Theses up to the door of the Wittenberg Chapel in 1517. It really wasn't that exciting. It was a bulletin board. Everybody put their stuff up there. I've been at the door. I've stood at the door, like Jesus, standing at the door knocking. But most have no idea that the Reformation was a crypto-Zadokim Zionist counter-intel operation. I've talked about that before. We may talk about it again later. But in addition to the doctrine of justification by faith and the opposition to the selling of indulgences, the greatest theme of the Protestant Reformation was end-time prophecy. One of the main reasons they had the Reformation was to reestablish the historical teaching that had been there since the beginning, that the papacy was the main target of the Protestant reformers, because the papacy was said to be the seat of Antichrist and Satan, and Revelation was a history of the rise of the Roman Church and it's being conquered and defeated by Rome in AD 70. But it was even more brilliant than that. It was even more brilliant than that. Because the institution of the papacy was the main target, and one side of this intel operation was focused on deflecting attention away from the unanimous historical understanding of Revelation, that it was all done, all finished, all prophecy, Daniel, Ezekiel, Matthew, finished by AD 70, and to deflect this knowledge by creating a future bad guy called the Antichrist. And the other side was rallying its troops to earnestly contend for the faith that was once delivered to the saints and come to defense of the Pope against these evil protesters. Did you ever wonder where Protestants came from? Protesters. The Protestants were protesters. It's just like the Republican-Democrat lie. It's just like the us versus them Republican-Democrat paradigm. Let's start this thing called the Reformation. We'll create two teams fighting against each other, and they'll be so busy fighting each other to defend their version of the fairy tale that they won't notice us taking over the world. That's basically how it went. And it worked brilliantly. Today, we've got the Roman Catholics who can look down their nose at and blame everything on and at least subtly war against the Roman Protestants, unless you're in Ireland, and then it's real war. While the Roman Protestants pat themselves on the back for their devotion to the word alone, never realizing and ignoring it when they do, or when they're shown, that they're fighting for Jesuit doctrine. That's right. I just said that all of the Roman Protestants are fighting for Jesuit doctrine, and I'm going to back it up. I'm going to prove it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cousins of all ages. And I'm going to encourage you, too, to go to lifewave.com/unindoctrinate, or just go to jeffreydaugherty.com, come down underneath the videos and click on the LifeWave button. Many of you are interested in stem cell therapy. Very strong, very powerful. But these days, you know, last year we just had to worry about, are these stem cells being sourced from ethical sources? Did they come from abortions? Or is it okay? That's all I worry about before. But now we got to worry about, are these stem cells ethically sourced? And did these stem cells come from a swimmer or not a swimmer? So now, when you are getting stem cells from people, you've got to begin to wonder, ooh, well, how about if you could activate, regenerate, and elevate your own stem cells? That's a whole different ballgame, isn't it? Lifewave.com/unindoctrinate or jeffreydaugherty.com. Come down under the videos and hit the LifeWave button. Great stuff. Great people. All right, we move on. They created the perfect us versus them paradigm, focusing on a totally false, completely Jesuit narrative that left the two branches of the Church of Rome in a family feud disguised as a holy war. And I'm reminded of the words of Christ in the blood red of children, where the Prince of Peace, who's Jesus obviously does, the Prince of Peace, where he said, I didn't come to bring peace, but I came to bring a sword. If Eric Bliss, you don't know what you're talking about, be quiet. I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword. And I came to turn son against father, daughter against mother, sister against brother. One's enemies will be of their own household. Is this what he was talking about? It's called a tell. They tell you, they show you. They tell you, they show you. And you thought that you were earnestly defending the faith once delivered. Well, you are, but it's not the faith that you thought it was. And you're being delivered into the hands of your enemies. I'm convinced, and I've proven it to you before, and I'll have to do it again, and that's okay, that the Protestant Reformation was a Catholic false flag. Actually, a Zio Jesuit Catholic false flag, which is really redundant, but you get my point. The plain facts show that the leaders of both sides of the Reformation were Catholic and crypto Zadokim Zionists. For example, this isn't what the show's about tonight, but I'll give you an example. John Calvin, his real name was Johann Cohen. Oh boy. And it's one of the greatest intelligence operations ever conceived and carried out, the Protestant Reformation. And basically it was started by the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, which are a crypto Zionist organization. Now, I'll tell you this just so it gives you a frame of reference. The Jesuits were so completely crypto Zadokim. What that means is the Jesuits started in Spain. Well, I never been to Spain. But anyway, I kind of like the music. They were in Spain, and Spain said, you're not allowed to be Jewish anymore. But I like being in Spain. I'm Jewish. What do I do? I know. I'll become a Jesuit. Because if you become a Jesuit, you get to officially say that you're a Catholic, but you get to do all of that Zadokim stuff behind closed doors. And it became so well known and it became so apparent that the Jesuits were so completely and thoroughly crypto Zadokim. You didn't know this, but the Catholic Church itself launched an inquisition against the Jesuits. Look it up. It's true. The Catholic Church had an inquisition on the Jesuits because they're so thoroughly crypto Zadokim. And they still are. In 1545, Ignatius of Loyola, who was a Basque nobleman, he was royalty. Royalty, Jewish, crypto-Jewish, soldiers. Counterintelligence is one of the principal elements of war. He founded the Society of Jesus, which is commonly known as the Jesuits. And included in their vows was a special vow of obedience to the Pope, who personally authorized the society's creation. Loyola had a military background. Isn't that interesting? He had a military background, and he found Jesus, quote unquote, while he was recovering from battle wounds. Ooh, this gives you a lot of context when you understand that the Jesuits consider themselves to be soldiers of God, and specifically to defend and propagate the Catholic faith and to defend the Pope. And counterintelligence, ladies and gentlemen, is an integral part of military operations. Wow. And do you really think it's a coincidence that at the explosion of the fervent public declaration of the Pope as Antichrist, that a corps of holy Marines would be formed with the express purpose of obedience to the protection of the Pope, and that they would speedily be dispatched in the counter-reformation activities with full military fervor and conviction? Folks, it's the very definition of divide and conquer. But what's a good battle without some good spoils to win? Who's going to fight if there's not something really good to win? So what do you get to win? Enter Father Francisco Ribera, a Spaniard, a Jesuit, recruited from being the confessor to Saint Teresa of Avila. And she's so interesting. Saint Teresa is the missing link that almost nobody else picks up on, but it completes the whole loop. And I'll do that for you here tonight. Teresa was a Catholic mystic, prolific writer. She was known to advocate and experience religious ecstasy, altered states of consciousness, greatly reduced external awareness, interior mental and spiritual awareness, frequently accompanied by visions, emotional, speaking in tongues, and demonstrations of euphoria. She was the seed of the Pentecostal charismatic movement. She was where the Pentecostal charismatic movement came from. And the Pentecostal charismatic movement itself is a divide and conquer operation within a divide and conquer operation. Because the Romans versus the Roman Protestants, that's a divide and conquer operation. Within the Roman Catholics, you got these people that call themselves charismatics, that want to speak in tongues. They want to lay hands on each other, not the normal way that the priests do it, but they want to do these spiritual gifts and charismatics. So it creates a war within the Catholic Church, charismatic, anti-charismatic. And at the same time, on the other side of the aisle, you got Christians, charismatics, anti-charismatics. If you know anything about it, people that aren't charismatic hate charismatics. People that are charismatic think everybody that's not is stupid and on their way to hell. So this whole thing was a divide and conquer operation within a divide and conquer operation started by a Catholic chick. Wow. Finally writing about 3 years after Luke. Wait a minute, I skipped. I think. I think. I did. I skipped. I skipped a lot. Wow. Skipped a lot. Boy, did we skip a lot. Boy, did we skip a lot. Sorry about that. Wow. There it is. And if you notice the circle, have you ever noticed the NFL shield? And if you really want to be scholarly, look at the original NFL shield. And then tell me again how it's okay for you to watch football. But anyway, just threw that one in for free. In 1585, Ribera wrote a book called Sacrum Beati Ionis Apostoli and Evangelistae Apocalypsis Commentari, or something like that. Translated to the sacred writings of John the Apostle with commentary on the Apocalypse, which is the book of Revelation. Why didn't he just say so? My Christian friends, my synagogue of Satan, those of you that are Jews but say you're not, my Zionist friends, my Zio-Christian, Zadokine, Freemason, Illuminati, Fear and Guilt, Blood Magic, Trauma-Based Mind Control, Matrix, friends. Everything you know about prophecy comes from this book because it never existed before this book. And you are now preaching the doctrines of a Jesuit priest. Congratulations. Ribera's task was very straightforward. He wanted to remove the papacy and the Catholic Church from consideration as the Antichrist and shift what was a unanimous historical perspective of the church to a futurist one. Do you understand that up until 1600, nobody even imagined that Daniel, Revelation, Matthew 24 wasn't already completely fulfilled with the destruction of Jerusalem? And here is Ribera trying to change it all. He wrote and began to teach that the first few chapters of Revelation were about ancient Rome. That was it. And the rest of it was limited to a yet period of 3.5 literal years, which would immediately precede the second coming. And to get this done, Ribera said, oh, that year-day theory that we've all believed ever since we've been a wee, that with the Lord, 1,000 days is as a year, and 1,000 years is as one day. So 1,260 days was actually 1,260 years, which was the math that the Millerites used and all those other people. But Ribera says, no, it's not really 1,260 years. It's a true 1,260 days, which is going to happen sometime in the future. Oh. History shows us that in one fell swoop, Father Ribera managed to wipe from the collective memory the 1,500-year-old convictions of the church. And in so doing, he also accomplished the amazing feat of converting the sons and daughters of the Protestant Reformation to his new Jesuit doctrine, which is now a fait accompli. Today we live in Ribera's world. That's the world of Protestant evangelical eschatology. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying that every single piece of prophecy was invented and written in this book by Father Ribera, and it did not exist before. I know it's hard for you to believe. You're under a heavy, heavy delusion. You're under a blood spell. You're in Stockholm Syndrome. But yet it can't be denied. He invented all of it. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying most of it. I'm not saying 99% of it. I'm saying 100% of your end time prophecy was invented by this chubby guy. And you know, they didn't do a lot of bathing back then, and he's kind of chubby, and he's got this wool robe. Can you imagine? Oh, man, I bet that's smelly. Can you imagine the butt crack on this guy? Oh. Anyway. You know, you couldn't believe it unless you see the history. One Jesuit priest writes one book, and he changes the historical position of the church and overcomes the loudest voices of Protestantism and the Protestant Reformation. The only way this can happen is if it's part of a plan or with a controlled media and a controlled church. You can decide which one it was. But Ribera's work conquered the world for futurism, convinced us all that the book of Revelation, the book of Matthew, Daniel, they didn't apply to history as we've been taught for 1,600 years exclusively. It was universally accepted that all prophecy ended by 870 before Ribera wrote this book. There was no third temple nonsense. There was no rapture nonsense. There was no red heifer nonsense. There was no trials and trumps and pence. None of that nonsense existed until Father Ribera wrote it down in his stinky robe. Right up to the point that the Jesuit wrote this book, nobody had ever heard of any of this nonsense. And since then, and solely because of this book, Revelation is no longer a historical rendering of the rise of Rome as the beast and the seed of Antichrist. It's now sold as a book about the future. And Daniel's 70th week is now future too. Therefore, the tribulation period was not a record of Romans bringing tribulation upon Christians at the direction of the Antichrist Pope, but it's a future period of persecution by some single individual called the Antichrist. So the Pope's off the hook. And it has to be said, the Jesuits and the counter-reformers have done a much better job than you Christians because they got you to preach their doctrine. You're their bitches now. Today's truthers are preaching Jesuit doctrine. You Christian truthers, you prophecy preachers are nothing but hoes to a Jesuit pimp. Now get back out on the corner and Make me some money. Wow. Truth is stranger than fiction. All you got to do is take one look at the beliefs of modern prophecy, modern end times, modern eschatology. Just one look. That's all it took. You can see how successful Stinky Rivera was. Christians exclusively interpret now Revelation and Daniel as containing future events, and the Antichrist is some future world-conquering boogeyman. And now we got a new game. It's called Pin the Tail on the Antichrist. He's the Antichrist. She's the Antichrist. Wouldn't you like to be the Antichrist too? Today, Jesuit futurist interpretation stands unopposed. And the great irony is that the sons and daughters of the Protestant Reformation attack anyone that dares stray from the Jesuit truth. Do you get how delicious this irony is? Go on any Christian channel, pick one, and they'll be telling you how bad Jeffery Daugherty is. What a demon Jeffery Daugherty is. How terrible Jeffery Daugherty is. When Jeffery Daugherty is preaching the message of Calvin and Luther, I'm preaching the message of the Reformers. They're preaching the message of the Jesuits. And they say that I'm the one that's bad. Folks, the Great Reset's already happened, and this is it. They reset Christianity and turned it into Jesuanity. Wow. That's powerful. And it's irrefutable. This Jesuit futurist idea assigns all prophecy to the future right before the second coming. The rapture is supposed to happen before the Great Tribulation. Now, there are a few people that believe it's going to happen in the middle of the Great Tribulation. There's fewer still that believe it's going to happen at the end of the Great Tribulation. And I put that asterisk to remind me to say this, because the Jesuits were good, man. Not only do they create this false dichotomy, not only do they destroy the historical perspective of the church by introducing this idea of futurism, but they knew that some people would study that out. They knew that some people would study and see that the Jesuits destroyed the historical perspective of the church and created this new doctrine. And this whole idea of pre-trib rapture, mid-trib rapture, post-trib rapture, it's actually two different faux enlightenments. Because when you first get this as a Bible student, as a Bible scholar that really cares about the word, most of you don't even know it, but the ones that really care about the word, the first thing you do is you say, oh, the rapture isn't real. It can't happen pre-tribulation. So you say, oh, it happens mid-tribulation. Oh, it happens post-tribulation. And you think you've discovered the truth. So you camp there. How do you know, Jeff? Because I did it. If you keep studying, then you find out if you keep pulling the string, pretty soon the whole sweater unravels. So they believe the rapture will happen before the Great Tribulation, and the Great Tribulation is either 7 years or 3.5 years, depending on which team you're rooting for, when believers will experience worldwide prosecution and martyrdom, not the historical rise of Rome where Christians did experience worldwide persecution and martyrdom. A minority of prophecy people believe in a mid-tribulation rapture, and even small minority believe in a post-tribulation rapture. But the Jesuits knew exactly what they were doing, then and now. They've transformed the reformers' spiritual descendants into the soldiers in Ribera's army, dutifully preaching his doctrine, protecting the Roman Church, protecting the Pope. In reality, the Pope's got a new army, and it's a volunteer army of Protestants preaching Jesuit doctrine. Congratulations, prophecy pimps. Congratulations, prophecy pimpettes. Prophecy pimpettes. You're the new Jesuits. Congratulations, Congratulations are in order. They've also built in faux enlightenments and family battles, like Jesus said. This further convinces me the entire Roman Catholic Pentecostal rapture paradigm is one big false flag with several mini false flags built in order to keep people fighting about the details of a fairy tale. Well, I think that the tooth fairy has 4 wings. No. The tooth fairy only has 2 wings. That's how ridiculous it is. You know what? I don't buy this 7 dwarfs thing. I think there were 6 dwarves. What? Yeah. There's only 6 dwarves. No, there's 7 dwarves. Nope, 6. Sleepy and Dopey were the same person. He was sleepy because he was dopey. Somebody slipped him some drugs. Only 6 dwarfs, not 7. It's really that stupid. It's exactly on that level. You're arguing about the details of a fairy tale. Oh, Sam's much cuter than Dean. No, Dean is much cuter than Sam. You're doing the same thing. Wow. You're doing the same thing, ladies and gentlemen. Exactly 100% the same thing. And you know, we might be in for some hard times, and we probably are. It might be a supply chain breakdown. It might be lockdowns. It might be social unrest. It might be weather. But now's the time to preparewithdarty.com. Go to preparewithdarty.com. I'm working with My Patriot Supply, and they'll give you 25% off a third supply of food. Have one for each family member. Go to preparewithdarty.com. Do it now before it's too late to do it. It's too late to do it. And the more recent heritage of the rapture can be traced to the British Isles and the churches of John Nelson Darby in the 1840s, just prior to Lincoln's War. Some of you call it the Civil War. That's really interesting. But it was there that a Scottish woman named Margaret MacDonald uttered a message in tongues that launched the modern rapture movement. Do you know that the whole modern rapture movement, pre-trib rapture, all started by one message in tongues, an interpretation of tongues by one crazy Pentecostal woman named Margaret MacDonald? The irony is delicious. The woman's supposed to be silent in church. See, there's tells all through the script if you learn how to read them. The women are supposed to be silent, and if you thought women were supposed to be silent, you never would have listened to this woman and got off track. And this is where the genius of the mystic Saint Teresa comes into play. Saint Teresa is the one who started this whole tongue-talking business in the church. She's the one who started the holy laughter. She's the one who started the holy rolling. She's the one that started the dancing around the church. She's the one that started the Jericho marches. Oh, I know all about it. I used to do it. She started the chicken, the chicken dance. Hey, you know the chicken dance. You've seen the chicken dance. It all came from the mystic Saint Teresa. Showing again, the rapture is part of a Catholic Jesuit Zionistic PSY-OP. Boom. You got to remember, folks, I was a Pentecostal preacher for 25 years. But I wasn't just a Pentecostal preacher. I've got a Bible college degree. I've got over 100,000 hours study in the biblical text. I preached on 5 different continents. But I was an evangelist. You know what an evangelist does? You go from church to church to church to church, coast to coast, border to border, wall to wall, treetop tall. That's what I did. So I have a great understanding of the width and breadth of the modern Pentecostal movement. I've seen Pentecostals from Florida to Washington State, from San Diego to the tippity top of Maine, literally, and everywhere in between, from San Antonio to Spirit Lake, Iowa, even up into Minnesota. I've been there. I've done that. I've seen them all. I understand Pentecostal culture as well as anybody in the world today. And what happened with Mary McDonald is this. You're sitting there, you're doing your worship service, and all of a sudden somebody will stand up, Honda, Toyota, Kawasaki, Lincoln, Buick, AMC, thinking in another language. And then it gets quiet. It's called speaking in tongues. It's the public version of tongues. Now, everybody got a private prayer language, but this is the public one. Honda, Semi, Toyota, Isuzu, Kawasaki, Chevrolet. They make the utterance in tongues. And then there's this hushed, like 15, 20, 30, 45 seconds. And you wait for somebody to interpret. But very rarely does anybody else interpret. It's always the one that did the Honda, Semi, Toyota comes in and says in English what the message was. It was always, I was really weird. Because Paul said, one tongues, one interprets. But anyway. Now you got a prophetic message. And these are exactly the type of things that St. Teresa experienced and taught. And remember, Father Ribera was her confessor. So he saw it. He witnessed it. And they're like, ooh, we can work together. And could it be, let's wax a little esoteric here. St. Teresa was obviously influenced by spiritual entities. You think that maybe the same spiritual entities that influenced St. Teresa influenced Mary McDonald and are still influencing today's Pentecostals and Charismatics? And that these same spiritual entities are what drives the rapture end time thought scenario? Oh, yeah. Speaking in tongues, that's called a archontic virus. An archontic virus. Wow. In following the well-reported Darby McDonald episodes, the rapture found its way into the notes and commentary of the Scofield Reference Bible, published in 1909. Most people believe that C.I. Scofield was present at one of those meetings where Mary McDonald gave her Honda. And I've proven this before. I'll prove it again. C.I. Scofield was a confirmed Jesuit agent. There's no doubt about it. And the funny thing, the way this all got started was that, the Scofield Reference Bible, that was the main textbook in virtually all of the early Protestant Bible institutes and all of the Pentecostal ones. And they had the Scofield Reference Bible, and he also had these charismatic, or these why does that keep changing on me? He had these correspondence courses that went with it. And that was the curriculum in most of these Bible institutes. So all of these preachers around the turn of the century that started the Assemblies of God, the Church of God, Cleveland, Tennessee, Church of God of Prophecy, all of these Church of God, Seventh Day, all of these churches, all of these Pentecostal charismatic churches, most of these Sabbatarian churches all got started in this movement. And they all cut their teeth on the Scofield Reference Bible. This is how the strange doctrine with the even stranger history, the even stranger pedigree, became firmly established in the American evangelical movement. That's why they think that the rapture is the fourth leg of the Trinity. because everybody believes it. Everybody believes it. Everybody believes it. And St. Teresa's involvement at the very beginning of Father Ribera's work can't be a coincidence. It's yet more strong evidence that the entire affair was and continues to be a masterful intelligence operation, and that the great Pentecostal charismatic movement is also a Jesuit operation, along with end time prophecy as a whole. You cannot make this stuff up. You can't. But I want to share with you one of my favorite conundrums. One of my favorite Christian conundrums, and boy, there's a bunch of them. But I want you to put this in your peace pipe and smoke it. The Apostle Paul wrote these words: "The dead in Christ will rise first." And to save time, I put there, as you can see, the Greek number of the word corpses, which is G for Greek, 3498. Arise is G 5547. And first is G 450. Now, Paul overplayed his hand here, and he created a huge, unsolvable problem. And I'm convinced that this is a great tell in the script to show you that it's ridiculous, that it's nonsense. Because when you compare this text of 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17 with another text that Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 15, you are left with an unresolvable conundrum that paints such a ridiculously foolish scenario that you have to see, oh, this is all a joke. Paul said, the corpses in Christ, the corpses, they're dead, they're in the grave. The corpses in Christ will arise. They'll come back to life first. They'll come out of the graves. When the Lord descends from heaven with a shout, with the voice of God, and with the trumpet call, these dead people will come out of the grave. Well, Jeff, you have to understand. He said it in 1 Corinthians 15. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, the dead will be raised incorruptible, and we'll all be changed. Yeah, but you skipped half the verse. What does the verse say? In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. What? The last trump? The trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Wait a second. 1 Thessalonians 4:16 says, the dead in Christ will rise first. The dead shall be raised incorruptible. The dead in Christ will rise first. The dead shall be raised incorruptible. The dead in Christ will rise first. And then we who are alive will be caught up together with them to meet the Lord in the air. We read it earlier in the show. And then we shall be changed. Wait a second. Wait a second. The dead in Christ rise. We are rise to join them together. But it happens at the last trump. The last trump. Oh no. The Corinthian passage clearly states that the transformation of bodies and corpses will take place at the last trump. Oh my. We got a huge problem. 1 Thessalonians 4:16, if it's the rapture, can't possibly happen at the last trump. If the modern prophecy experts are to be believed, they are. Prophecy, everybody knows prophecy's real. Everybody knows prophecy's true. Jeff, why do you fight against prophecy? Everybody knows it's real. Well, if it is real, then there's at least 7 more trumps to come in the book of Revelation after the trumpet in 1 Thessalonians 4:16. which according to modern prophecy doctrine is clearly future to Thessalonians and Corinthians. So if the last trump doesn't happen until right before the second coming, and the rapture happens either 3.5 years or 7 years before the second coming, depending upon your interpretation, then you've got a really big, stinky problem. Because assuming Paul doesn't contradict himself, which of course my Christian friends tell me he can't, because the scripture cannot contradict itself. It doesn't contain any contradictions. And if we can believe both Bible verses, and Paul wrote all scripture, he told Timothy, all scripture is inspired of God, and it's profitable for doctrine, doctrine. It's profitable for doctrine, reproof, and exhortation. We then have to believe that Paul's right in both cases. And we have to believe that the corpses that rise in 1 Thessalonians will remain corpses unchanged until the time of the Corinthian trumpet, the Revelation trumpet, at the very least 3.5 years into the future. So if Paul's right, and if the Bible contains no contradictions, and if we're not allowed to have any private interpretation, then there's going to be undead zombie corpses walking around in heaven. Oh, it's so beautiful. You can't explain that. And the ridiculousness of that picture should slap you like a wet mop hitting a watermelon. It is put into the text so that anybody with at least 3.75 active brain cells can look at it and say, oh, this is all a joke. They're screwing with us. They're screwing with us. Everybody knows there's not going to be zombies in heaven for 3.5 or 7 years. That's nonsense. The rapture is nonsense. Bible prophecy is nonsense. Nonsense invented by a Jesuit in the 16th century. And now the sons and daughters of the Protestant Reformation are preaching Jesuit doctrine. Jesuits are thoroughly crypto-Jewish. Now you know who the synagogue of Satan is. The people that say they're not Jews, but they are. We're not Jewish. We just preach Jesuit Jewish doctrine. What did Jesus say? Jesus said, it's not what goes into a man that defines him, but it's what comes out. The words that you speak show who and what you are. Jesuit, Jew, Zionist, synagogue of Satan. That the Thessalonian event is universally accepted as the rapture is beyond question. The Corinthian event coming at the last trumpet has to refer to the second coming. Rapture and prophecy proponents insist that the time between these two events will be either 3.5 or 7 full years. Paul's writings show conclusively that for at least 3.5 years, there will be corpses in heaven that will remain corpses. If we're to accept all the Pauline and Jesuit writings on the subject, then the inescapable conclusion is that the Lord will create zombies. What happens to the zombie corpses after they're taken away? Will they be segregated? Ooh. Will they be forced to shelter at home? Surely this exposes the folly of this manufactured event And it's a massive disclosure tell. Surely you see it. Surely you see it. And while we're at it, let's touch on this. Let's talk about the abomination of desolation. And as I talk about that, most of you are thinking about the future Antichrist going into the future rebuilt third temple and setting himself up in the Holy of Holies as God. That's what you're thinking about. That's what you're thinking about. Because that's what Jesuit taught you. Ribera taught you. Mark 13:14 says, but when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it shouldn't be, let he that readeth understand. Then let those that are in Judea flee to the mountains. That's Mark chapter 13. That comes from the Gospel of Mark. And I got to share this with you. The word gospel, that word gospel, is not really a Greek word. That word gospel was invented by the Roman imperial cult. The cult that worshipped Caesar as divine invented the word gospel. Now, they try to tell you in Strong's, and your preacher tries to tell you that the word gospel means the good news. As usual, they're only telling you half the truth, and half the truth is a lie. Because what that word actually means is the good news of the military victories of Caesar. A little bit of study will prove it to you. So isn't it interesting that the Gospel of Mark, the Gospel of Matthew, the Gospel of Luke, the Gospel of John is really news about the victories of Caesar. And the good news of the victories of Caesar written by Mark, he quotes the Jesus character telling his readers in the mid-first century, just like Paul did, that they would see themselves the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet in their time, when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel standing where it ought not. He was talking to those people right then and there. That's what the text shows. Don't give me your private interpretation. He said, some of you are going to see it. And he tells them, when you do, get the heck out of Dodge. Flee. Josephus writes that some people, upon seeing the arrival of the Roman army, fled the city. And they lived. Most didn't flee, and they died. He tells them, little plastic Jesus, words of Christ in red, blood red of children, so that when you see something standing where it shouldn't be, there's the Roman army perfectly. Those who read and understood it in AD 66 had the time to get out of the city alive. The Gospel of Luke, the good news of the victories of Caesar by Luke, confirms this beyond all doubt. He says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded with armies, know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Luke 21:20. You see how that works? Mark, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet, standing where it shouldn't be. Luke, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, know that its desolation is near. Luke's readers would have been very familiar with Mark's linkage of Daniel's words. He simply stated that the abomination of desolation was the army surrounding Jerusalem in a place where it shouldn't have been. This is and was the message of the church, the message of everybody that ever saw a Bible until the 16th century. Right up until the Jesuit wrote the book that said, no, that's wrong. Finally, you had Luke. Matthew's gospel of the good news of Caesar links the army referenced by Luke to the prophecy of Daniel. The historical position of the church that stood unchallenged till the 15th century was the rise of Father Ribera and the Jesuits. The Jesus character was quoted 3 times in the good news, the victories of Caesar, written by Matthew, Mark, and Luke, saying the destruction of Jerusalem was the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. And yet, all of you modern prophecy experts unanimously side with Father Ribera and the Jesuits, saying, oh no, the abomination of desolation hasn't happened yet. It's going to be in the future. Congratulations, you little Jesuits. Synagogue of Satan, saying that you're not Jews, but you are, as evidenced by the words that come out of your mouth and the actions of your life. And this is about you. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears, and they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 3 through 4. And Mark Twain, it's not in the Bible, but it could have been. It's easier to fool someone than to convince them that they've been fooled. So why do I keep trying? I don't know. I don't know. Probably because there's some 8 billion of us. And even if I only get through to a tiny percentage, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people, ladies and gentlemen. Boys and girls, cousins of all ages. Pick up the phone and call. Prove me wrong. Or shut the hell up and go away. It's one way or the other. It's one way or the other. Now, I don't know if I can get the phones to work tonight. I don't think I can. I don't have the... Do I have Ring Central downloaded on this? Ring Central app. Ooh. We might be able to do it, ladies and gentlemen. We might be able to do it. Start screen can't be reached right now. Check my internet connection's not good enough. That's a bummer. That's a bummer. Well, we might have to violate our own rules tonight. We might have to allow you to put your questions in the chat room. Let me try one more time, see if Ring Central will open. Let's try one more time. Will Ring Central open? No, it won't open. Now I got all this crap in here I can't close. Great. Uh-oh. It's trying to come up. It's trying to come up, ladies and gentlemen. Boys and girls, cousins of all ages, it's trying. Let's see if Ring Central makes it. Let's see if Ring Central makes it up. Wouldn't that be groovy if it could? I don't hold out much hope, but maybe it could. But in the meantime, go ahead and put your questions in the comments. Welcome to the Ring Central app. Sign in. We may be able to do this, folks. Of course, it's going to require me to remember my password. But anyway, I don't know if it's going to work or not. But I'm totally constantly amazed by these people. Ooh, sign in. That want to come into my chat room and preach their gospel, but they won't pick up a phone and call. That really, really bothers me because it's low integrity. And it shows that they're chicken. Chicken. And it bugs me. Because I want to see somebody actually call and actually try to share something with me. It's easy to be a keyboard cowboy. It's easy to be a keyboard warrior. Why don't you actually, this site is trying to open Ring Central. Yes, open it. Allow it to open. Open. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's going to work. Let's see. Let's see if it's going to work. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk about, we're going back to the Friday night at the movies, late night at the movies. And we're going to talk about the movie Wander. The movie Wander. Wow. It's about David Goldberg and the worst case scenario. You've got to be here tomorrow night. The disclosure in that movie is absolutely stupendous. Absolutely stupendous. So if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them into the chat room. That doesn't mean preach your doctrine. It means ask a question or give a short, succinct challenge to me, but make sure that it is backed with receipts. Cobby says, never trust a Goldberg or a Goldstein. I get you, but that's a little lowbrow. That's a little stereotypical, and it's a little borderline ignorant. I mean, come on. There can be Goldberg and be a German name that has nothing to do with the Zadokim. You're new here. Take it easy on you. You got to be better than that, though. You got to be better than that. Wesley, no one cares about your opinion. They didn't come here for your opinion. They came here for mine. If you want to share your opinions, pick up the phone and call in. Don't do it in the chat room. Jesus hates masks and needles. But he just wrote back and said, sell your coat and buy a sword. That's funny. That's funny. Do you think the writers of the Bible fabled us? Absolutely they did. Absolutely they did. What? Somebody asked a sensible question in the chat room. I know you can do it. There's got to be somebody that has a question. Somebody's going to have a question. Laura says that she loves the Jews. She has a lot of Jewish friends. Well, Laura, as you know, because you listen to the show on a regular basis, we are not talking about the Jewish people. I have many Jewish friends. I've had many Jewish friends on this program. But what we're talking about are the Zadokim Zionists. They are not our enemies. They want to destroy us. Not all Jewish people are Zionists, but all Zionists are what we know as Jewish people today. So that's just the truth. I'm sorry if you find it uncomfortable, but it's still the truth. And we have to come to the place where we're old enough and smart enough to actually be willing to share the truth, be willing to hear the truth. Why did the sign-in fail? I don't think I have the bandwidth, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have the bandwidth, Captain. I wonder if I can sign into Ring Central on my phone. Is that possible? Jeff, just give us your cell phone number and we'll call you there. Yeah, right. I am not about to give out my cell phone number because some of you fools are crazy. Trust me. Some of you fools are stock raving, mad, crazy. And ain't no way I'm giving you my cell phone number. It ain't going to happen. It just ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. Did they change the calendar? Yes, they did. Could we do Google Voice? Now that number we give out. Let's see what we got here. Let's see if I can do the Google Voice. Somebody do me a favor. Let me make sure I'm in the right email first. Somebody do me a favor here in a second. I'm not in the right one yet. Let me get in the right email. Okie dokie. We're going to go to the right email. Somebody do me a favor. Somebody dial 813-534-0083. 813-534-0083. And that should ring through to my Ring Central or to my Google number, and we should be able to hear it. Somebody do it, even if you don't have a question, even if you don't have an answer. Call up 813-534-0083. I'll put that in the chat. Somebody do it. 813-534-0083. Come on. There, I put it in the chat. Somebody call that number. Let's see what happens. See if it'll ring. I don't know if I have the bandwidth, but it might ring. It might ring. That's my Google number. I will never, ever answer it other than now if you call it. But you could leave a message. So there you go. We're also streaming on Odyssey, ladies and gentlemen. I do like Odyssey. It's a great platform. So you can find us on Odyssey under the Christian Whistleblower. So feel free to do that. It's a great platform. I really enjoy it. I still get so much email from President Trump. I keep it so I can keep a look at the guy. I want to be able to keep track of him. Thank you to Jagged DN51, who's now following me on Twitch. I do appreciate that very, very much. And let's see. Doesn't look like anybody has anything to say tonight. That's okay. That's okay. I'm not going to let it bother me. Not going to let it bother me at all. So let's look at some CNN news, ladies and gentlemen. This one made me laugh. I mean, I literally chuckled when I read it. Hillary Clinton, as reported by MSN, Hillary Clinton said in an interview today, or the story was written 4 hours ago, Hillary Clinton said, "We are in the middle of a constitutional crisis." Now, is that disclosure or is it just nonsense? Hillary Clinton can draw a straight line from her deals with conservative media and Republican politicians in the 1990s to the January 6th event, and she fears worse is coming. There's always been a kind of paranoid streak in American politics, the old battle axe said to the Atlantic staff writer Jennifer Senior. But it was never given such voice, such a platform, and had so much money behind it until we saw the rise of radio voices like Rush Limbaugh. And then, of course, the internet just put it on steroids. Too much democracy out there for Hillary. Too much people speaking their minds out there for Hillary. She blames the tech giants for facilitating the rock conspiracism and Republicans for exploiting fear and suspicion in a quest to permanently seize political power. Do you understand what's happening? This is blame the other person for everything that you're doing. Distract by blaming the other person for every single thing that you're doing. She references moves of state legislatures to change election laws. Do you know what that means? They're trying to change election laws like you've got to have a photo ID to be able to vote. And in Hillary's mind, that's a crisis. If you have the ability to come in, unless you have some unusual situation, you have to come in to vote. And if you do have to mail it in, you actually have to mail it in. This is what they're talking about. And she says that these changes make for a constitutional crisis. It's only a crisis in the Constitution of Hillary Clinton and her ilk. They're afraid that if we ever can get control of the vote back, that it's over for them. But really, this is trying to fix the barn door after the horses have all run out, because elections don't matter anymore. They just don't matter anymore because we are in Stalin territory. We are in Stalin territory now, ladies and gentlemen. And Stalin territory is that it doesn't matter who votes. It only matters who counts the votes. That is Stalin territory. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is 100% where we are today. We're in Stalin territory. So if you think that you can do anything, if you think that you can accomplish anything by voting, you are absolutely 100% fooling yourselves. You're silly. You're like children. That's nonsense. There is no help. There is no use. There is no reason to ever think about voting again, because we're in Stalin territory. And Stalin rhymes with stolen, doesn't it? You know about the last election. You know what happened. You know it doesn't matter who voted for whom. They already decided what they were going to do, and they did it. You know these things. So why are you still allowing people to talk to you and try to get you excited about 2022, trying to get you excited about 2024? I see your signs. I see your emails. What's the matter with you? How can you be so silly? How can you be so foolish? You know what they're doing. You see what they're doing. You're smarter than this. We've got to pull our heads out and realize that there's no going back to the way it was. We've got to move forward and make a new way of being. We've got to go back. We've got to go forward and do what has to be done. If you want to go back, I suggest that you go back to the words of Thomas Jefferson. A little bit of revolution is a good thing every now and then. That every now and then it's necessary for the tree of liberty to be fertilized by the blood of tyrants. Now, I'm not advocating for anything other than advocating for pulling our heads out of our derrieres and realizing what time it is and realizing what needs to be done and realizing what needs to happen. That's all I'm talking about. That's all I'm talking about. That's all I'm advocating. And you know I'm right. You have to know I'm right. This is where we are. This is the reality. This is the way that it is. It really is. And I just don't understand why so many of you can't see it. I just don't understand why so many of you want to pretend that everything's okay. And you're talking about Trump 2024. That's about the stupidest thing that I've ever heard. And I've heard a lot of stupid things. Trust me, I really have. I've heard a lot of stupid things. And I just don't get it. We're smarter than that. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on and talk about something else. Hillary still trying to be involved. This comes to us from Cynthia. And somebody was just talking about it in the chat room, I think. It's all theater. Joe Biden, obviously, and that's the thing about it. It was so obvious. You got to wonder, why was it so obvious? It's so obvious that Joe Biden staged his COVID booster shot thing, complete with a fake outdoor background. Even Stephen Colbert ridiculed it. And when Stephen Colbert is ridiculing it, you know that people know. So you've got to ask yourself, why? Why do they do it? Why do they do something that is so demonstrably fake? They do something that is demonstrably on a set because they want you to know that it's fake. They want you to know they have a pattern of lying, a pattern of deceiving, a pattern of fraud. They want you to know that they're lying to you whenever their lips are moving. They want you to know that it's all a joke. And yet still so many of you are still buying the BS. I don't get it. I don't understand it. What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? This also comes to us from Cynthia. And it's called the Great Ivermectin Deworming Hoax. Deworming hoax. In a normal year, says this article, and this article comes from the desertreview.com, Imperial Valley news that matters to you. In a normal year, the Kentucky Poison Control Center might receive one call from someone who has taken ivermectin, a drug commonly used to treat parasites in livestock. But amid increasing misinformation about the drug's ability to both treat and prevent the cootie, the number has increased to 6 this year. 6 people. The alarming news was published in Spectrum News, formerly known as Time Warner Cable, which takes us back to Gabby Petito. Because her dad worked for Time Warner Cable. This lesson is not about ivermectin being poisonous, because it isn't. But it's about the pervasiveness of a type of internet propaganda termed information flooding. So wait a second. You just told us that ivermectin is not poisonous, but yet you started your story by telling us that 6 people have called in to the Kentucky Poison Control, but it's not poison. So why is it a story? Because it's meant for you people that have attention spans that are no longer than your little finger. Because most of you will only listen to this on CNN, and you'll believe whatever CNN says about it. But the few of you that actually look at this will look at the headline only and see ivermectin deworming hoax. But yet, within this story, they still have to tell you the truth. It's called plausible deniability. They're telling you that ivermectin can commonly be used to treat parasites. They're telling you that it has an ability to both treat and prevent the cootie. But oh my goodness, they've got 6 calls this year about ivermectin, which isn't poisonous. And they write a story, the pervasiveness of internet propaganda, when they themselves are purveying internet propaganda. Wow. Minnesota, same problem. 9 people called them up. That means 9 people called up and mentioned ivermectin. It's not a poison. They're probably calling up saying, hey, I want to prevent the cootie. Is it okay for me to take ivermectin? Oh, no. They're calling that a poison control call. When all they're doing is calling up and saying, hey, I heard that ivermectin's good for treating the cootie. And this writer has the tendency to say, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Why 9 calls enough to make the headlines? See, they're telling you themselves that they're being ridiculous. 9 calls in the headlines because they know that most of you, if you read anything, are going to read the headlines. And by the way, the poison control centers across the nation, all of them are coordinated by the CDC, and all of them are closely aligned with the FDA. You see all of these articles on ivermectin poisoning when they admit ivermectin is not a poison. And they're telling you that it is effective to treat the cootie. So we've got to learn to read. We've got to learn to read more than just the headline. And we've got to learn, and we've just at this. And Two Trees sends us this. I'm waiting for it to open with my bandwidth challenges here in Rapid City, South Dakota tonight. It's great to see all of you here. I'm glad that we've been able to give you a great show. I'm glad that we've been able to bring you this great information. Let me see if I can open this one again. It didn't open for me. And I do appreciate so much everybody sending me this information. It's very powerful. And we love doing the Cousins News Network segments. And there's so many of you out there, and you're so smart, and you have so many great ideas. And you have such a great eye for news. And it doesn't just have to be news. It can just be ideas. Many of the programs that I do actually come from your ideas. That comes from things that you suggest. And I got no problem doing shows out of things that you suggest. But don't think that every time you suggest something, I'll do a show about it, because that's just not possible. There's too much of them. There's too many of them. But I'm not picking on you. I'm not disliking you if I happen to not use your idea for a show. Don't feel that way, because there's only a certain number of shows, and there's a whole lot of cousins sending stuff in. I want to try again to open this news item from Two Trees, because I know this is a really, really good one. This is a really, really good one. But we got a lot of slowness here on this internet, folks. A lot of slowness. That's one of the things about camping. You just never know what you're going to get as far as the internet goes. Yes. Well, you're in the wilderness when you're camping a lot of times, right? So I guess it just makes sense that you're not always going to be able to get good internet, but that's okay. We can still have good programmings. So I don't know if this is going to come up or not. Here it comes. Let's see. I want to ask you guys a question too about this. What about this idea? And I've never really bought it. I'm telling you, I've never really bought it. But I'm asking you, this idea of the FEMA making these plastic things that are coffins. I see what they're shaped like, but I just can't convince myself that they're coffins. I'd love to see what you think on that. Are they really coffins? I don't know. But Two Trees sends us this in, and it says, dangerous speech versus free speech. Mobs of Ignoramuses by John Rappaport. This ought to be good. Thanks to Two Trees for sending this in. It starts with a quote from George Washington, and it says, for if men are to be precluded from murder, which may involve the most serious and alarming consequences, that can invite the consideration of mankind. Reason is of no use to us. The freedom of speech may be taken away, and dumb and silent we may be led, like sheep to the slaughter. George Washington, 1783. Regardless of what we've learned to know about Washington, the words are true. If we allow our freedom of speech to be taken away, we will be led like sheep to the slaughter. And isn't it interesting that the script says that Jesus was led like a sheep to the slaughter, and we are encouraged to follow the ways of Jesus. They're trying to get us to lead ourselves to the slaughter and to let ourselves be slaughtered instead of fighting back. But anyway, many people, Rappaport says, believe that the security falsehoods can be so dangerous that censorship is absolutely necessary. You know what? I'm going to bail out of this, and I'm going to, I wondered why I got these things. I got some things today. And I got the one thing about the college that I shared with you, and I've got about 15 minutes to share this other one. And let's see if anybody says anything about these bodies, first of all. Let's see. Let's see. Biodegradable coffins. Well, the ones I saw look like they're plastic. Maybe they're little boats. Maybe. I think they're just used to stack bodies before incineration. Never-ending network. That makes a lot of sense to me. It does look like a good place to stack bodies before incineration. But also, you know what, Never-ending network? We think now of, there's at least 3 cases that I've seen of corpses being loaded into refrigeration trucks. Now, if you're going to freeze bodies, maybe you stack them 3 or 4 high in those containers. Now, that's something. That's something. I don't know about that, but that's a really good thought. That's a really good point. What else we got here? That's about it. Yeah, Etheric Bliss says, yeah, this rumor's been going on for a long time. But it could be. It could be. I don't know. It could be. But let's talk about this for a minute. And this might get us kicked off of YouTube, so I'll have to delete the show as soon as it's over again. This is something else I got today by way of realization. And I want to share it with you because, well, I think I'm supposed to. Because here we are in this place tonight at this time with about 13 minutes left. I was thinking today, and we're out here in the Rapid City area. It's a beautiful area. We're relaxing. We had nothing to do today but just relax. And I tell you what, it is so nice to be able to just sit and relax. Baby's eyes with the black goo, Heather says. Black-eyed children I never even thought that that might just be black goo. I got to write that down. Where'd my pen go, Heather? Heather, I just had a pen. Oh, there it is. I got to write that down. Black-eyed children and black goo. That's brilliant. Black-eyed kids and black goo. I like that one. All right. We got great guests coming up next week. Michelle Swinick, Robert Stanley, and we're building more. So this is what came to me. This is what came to me. We have seen the numbers show without a doubt that there is no significant increase in numbers of death year over year. They've been virtually the same for the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Virtually the same. The number of deaths is virtually the same. It's unchanged. When you adjust it for percentages of a larger population, the numbers of deaths are exactly the same. The numbers of deaths are exactly the same. They're virtually the same year over year. And yet, they want us to believe that they have developed a super pathogen. And this pathogen is so deadly. It's killed millions and millions of people, but it's the same number of people that died in years before. And if you look at the numbers, everybody this year is dying of the cootie. Nobody's dying of cancer. Nobody's dying of heart disease. Nobody's dying of arterial sclerosis. Nobody's dying from flu. Nobody's dying from but cootie-19. That's called cooking the books, ladies and gentlemen. They want us to believe that they've developed this super pathogen and that it's killing millions when nobody more is dying than usually dies. Those are the facts. They're trying to make you afraid for some reason. They want us to believe that they've developed this super pathogen, and it's so deadly that the facts show that it kills less than 2% of the people it quote unquote infects. It kills less than 2%. Those are the stated facts. And almost no one gets killed that doesn't have significantly compromised medical status pre-infection, quote unquote. We were listening, Cynthia and I, today to this. I think it was the Australian Prime Minister, the Prime Minister. It was Australia. It was New Zealand. One of those people with that lovely accent. And she talked about the tragedy of 9 new deaths from the cootie. And then she went on to tell us that out of the 9, 5 of them, and it sounds ridiculous, 5 of them were over 80 years old, and 3 of them were over 90 years old. Now, I'm not saying it's okay for old people to die, but when 90-year-olds and 80-year-olds die, 9 of them in a whole nation in a day, that's been happening forever. But they want to make us afraid that grandma's going to die and grandpa's going to die. When the reality is that less than 2% of the people that get this thing die. And if everybody, if everybody in the whole world got the cootie, about 35 million people would die. That's a lot of people. That's too many. But by vaccinating everybody in the world, over 3 billion would die based on the current statistics. But we all need to go swimming to save us, when if we don't go near the water, or if every one of us got infected, quote unquote, we'd lose about 33, 34, 35 million people. If we all get the thing that's supposed to save us, we'll lose almost 4 billion. Makes no sense. But they also want us to believe not only that they have developed this pathogen. It got developed in a lab. Yeah, Fauci was working on it. All these people working on it. It was a terrible thing. It's a bioweapon. It's engineered. They want us to believe that. They also want us to believe and fear a nuclear holocaust. They also want us to believe that there's all these nuclear weapons that could wipe us all out at any moment. They also want us to believe and be afraid of space weapons. Oh no, now weapons from space. They can kill us all. They also want us to fear extraterrestrial. The extraterrestrials might come and kill us all. They also want us to worry about meteors, comets, Nibiru, Planet X. Folks, the nuclear weapon scare is a psyop, I'm convinced. Space weapons is a psyop, I'm convinced. Extraterrestrials coming to kill us is a psyop, I'm convinced. Meteors, etc., are a psyop, I'm convinced. So why do so many of us, even us in the so-called truth movement, why do so many of us want to believe that their airborne pathogen is real? It was created in a lab from a bat. In a lab? It lives, it's alive. In a lab from a bat. So it's kind of like a Frankenstein and Dracula combo. No one's ever seen this thing. Yeah, but Dr. Judy Mikovits said she also worked at Fort Detrick. And how do you know she might be? I'm just saying, in on it. Nobody's ever seen it. It's never been isolated. Well, Jeff, I saw pictures. No, you didn't. You saw drawings. You saw computer-generated art. No one's ever seen it. But, Jeff, it's got patents. Just because it's patented doesn't make it real. Why do even we in the truth movement want to believe that their pathogen is real? Even when you see these people that you trust, they say, now, we're not saying that there isn't a cootie. We know there's a cootie. How do we know there's a cootie? We haven't seen the cootie. The cootie's never been isolated. We believe that there's a cootie because they told us there was a cootie. We believe there's a cootie because they invented the cootie in a lab. We believe that there's a cootie because the cootie got loose. We believe that there's a cootie because they tell us there's a cootie, and it's a really, really bad cootie. It's a killer cootie. We believe there's a cootie because they told us there's a cootie? When was the last time they told us the truth? The next time they tell us the truth will be the first time. What if the cootie is just the latest psyop? What if they're trying to shore up the crumbling germ theory paradigm? Who tells us about the cootie? Who's pushing the narrative? The same ones that pushed the original narrative of Pasteur's poisons. Do they really have the power to put something in the air that just by breathing they can kill us all? It reminds me of being the prince of the power of the air. They're telling us that they're the prince of the power of the air. They're telling us that they can put something in our air that just by breathing it's going to kill us. They want us to fear them. It's all fear porn. They want to make us believe that they can take us out when the reality is exactly the opposite. And White Eagle Hodges hits it on the head. All of this is fear porn. Frankenstein, lab, Dracula, bat, fear porn. to drive us to go swimming. The whole point of the narrative is to drive us to the pool. Only way that they can take us out is if we take a dive into the pool. Don't dive in. Don't dive in. I'm convinced that them to put something airborne that will kill us all breathing is no more real than the planes penetrating through the buildings on 9/11. It's no more real than the worry of space weapons. It's no more real than the threat of the nuclear weapons. It's more fear porn from a defeated enemy that wants us to believe that they can wipe us out anytime, when the truth is exactly the opposite. When we decide it's been enough, it'll be over. When you remember who you are, it'll be over. When we remember that we're divine, we're sovereign, and we're free, things will go back to the way it's supposed to be. It ends as soon as we decide it does. Well, it's nearly midnight Mountain Time on the last day of September. Do you remember back in September? Maybe this is the day we make a decision. No more. No more. I'm just going to say no. I'm Jeffery Daugherty, the Christian whistleblower, your mailman. This is Late Night in the Heartland, live on the road in Rapid City, South Dakota. We'll be back tomorrow night with an epic broadcast about Wander movie. Wander, the David Goldberg in the worst case scenario. Something that it will be great revelation on Trump. You've got to be here tomorrow night. I may go somewhere locally here and see if there's a stronger internet signal to be able to bring you video and everything tomorrow night. Hit the like button while you're here. Thank you for being here. I salute you for being here seeking after truth. And remember, you're the last generation of real humans. You're divine, you're sovereign, you're free. There's no reason for you to go on bended knee for anybody else's savior, and no reason for you to take a knee to any other human being. We'll see you again tomorrow night. This is Jeffery Daugherty saying, I love you from the heart and